Summaya Mughal.
BBC Radio Leicester.
Uncomfortable conversations on BBC Leicester.
Hello, good morning, Summaya with you. It is 10:21 and you've been hearing all this week about kids' relationships with their smartphones. 9-year-old Finn has been conducting an investigation into whether he's ready to have a smartphone, and you've heard evidence from across the board. Today, I'm broadening that conversation a little bit. So you've heard a lot about why smartphones can be difficult or positive, but what about the wider tech landscape? Well, Jo Winterbourne is the East Midlands STEM Manager for the Leicestershire Education Business Company, and she's got some thoughts about introducing kids to STEM. Hello, morning.
Morning, how are you?
I'm all right, Tar. How are you?
Yeah, very good, very good.
I'm really interested in what your bit of tech is that changed your life, but we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
First of all, what's STEM?
Okay, so STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering and Maths, and this is a programme that runs across the UK, so it's run by government, and it's about engaging young people and getting them to take part in all of those aspects so that they can produce and move into career pathways that are affected and are delivered in the STEM industry. So, for example, in Leicestershire and in Leicester itself, you know, we've got the Space Centre, we have a lot of space technology that goes on. So we need to encourage the likes of Finn at 9 to actually understand what you can do, what's out there. The world is a huge oyster of science, technology, engineering and maths.
And what does the Leicestershire Education Business Company do?
So we have the contract for that partnership from STEM Learning, which is the UK umbrella organisation, and part of what we also do as the Leicester Education Business Company is that we deliver careers advice across Leicestershire, and we also deliver work experience, so we can marry those three things together. So if you have a son or daughter who's interested in science, technology, engineering and maths, and they do work experience in school, we can help them find an employer or an employees who might take them on board for their work experience. We have careers advisors who go into schools to give advice to young people about where they might like to be, what they might like to be doing in the future.
Can tech like smartphones that we've been speaking about all this week be used to introduce kids to science and tech in a positive way, to STEM in a positive way? What do you think?
Yeah, I think so, because it's technology and phones now are part and parcel of a young person's life. I'm quite elderly in many respects, so mobile phones were not something that existed when I first started working. Now every child can have a mobile phone, and also the technology that's within that allows them to do so many different things. You know, I was talking in the office yesterday with some parents, and they were saying that their child has a maths app on their phone to do their maths homework. It works on AI, so it works to their ability level. So each child, it adapts to that student. So that's really important, because that encourages them.
But take something like mathematics.
Yeah.
Is there the danger that you just use a calculator for everything? You don't need to learn your timetables off by heart. You don't need to learn Pythagoras' theorem or trigonometry. I think the thing is that they should run hand in hand. And actually, if you go on to do A-level maths, or you go on to do a degree, or you use maths within career pathways, so for example, if you go into the construction industry, then you actually have to be able to think on your feet and use it. But you would also use a calculator or a phone or a program to actually help you solve that problem. So you have to have both, and that's the thing, I think, is that we only look at the fact that there is technology. We don't look at about the fact that actually you need to have some understanding of what, where and how in order to use the technology. And I think it's also about how you use the technology in a way that doesn't also take away from your actual understanding of the thing that you're doing. So for example, why is it that Pythagoras' theorem, just because I mentioned it, works? You know, how did that, you know, and how is it that, you know, why is it that when you're doing trigonometry it works to do this and that, rather than just learning the formula and being like, this is how you do it and that's that.
And that is part of how education works. You know, one of the things I, as a careers advisor, when I talk to students, they often say, well, why do I need to know that? Well, if you're building a house, you need to understand Pythagoras' theorem, because actually roofs don't get built otherwise. So if you can apply it to an everyday project or a subject, then that makes it easier for that student and that person to understand. And then using the technology to help them do that job quicker, faster, easier, then that's how it works.
Do you think there is a sweet spot of encouraging and actually being able to give that understanding to a child as well as using the technology? Because it may well be the case of, like, I don't need to know how it works. Like, all I know is that I press this, and this, and that's it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I think there is a sweet spot, and I think actually you do have to make sure that that young person understands how things work in order for them to then use the technology. Because actually, if you ask young people, I know if they're using games, it becomes rote to a certain extent, but if they're actually doing something and producing a project or using technology or AI or a smartphone or a calculator or something that's going to work out a program for them, or they're coding, then they're actually having to understand what it's doing in order to do those things.
So what's your view on kids having smartphones? What would you say, Jo?
I think they're important. I think they are needed. However, what is good about smartphones, a bit like, TV and films, is that parents can have some control over that. And I do think there is a need to make sure that they go out and run around a field, they do something that's hands-on and practical, that they come away from screens sometimes, because actually that means socially they're better at engaging with people and their peer groups as well.
Do you think that it's an inevitability, if you don't want to be left behind, that you don't want your child even to be left behind, that you'd have to give them a smartphone? If you're think about STEM, right, and we're talking about technology and education and maths, etc., can you work in that space and have a career in that space if you're not savvy with tech?
I think the answer probably going forward will be no. But I do also think that during the pandemic, it was very obvious that young people with phones, it allowed them to access things in a manner that was very positive.
Yeah, of course.
So actually, it is a balance, and it is a balancing act. And I'm sure most of your commentators this week have said exactly the same, that actually, yeah, there are negatives, but there are also a huge amount of positives. So I think going forward, most young people will need to understand how that functions, because you were talking about your car earlier on. I've just got a new car, and I get into it and it sings at me and does stuff and I go, oh my God, because actually it connects to my phone now automatically. So you have to have a little bit of understanding. It doesn't mean to say you can't back off either, though.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I do not have a flashy car as a result of that.
Exactly.
No, I can't be dealing with that. No. My phone connected to my car, we don't want that. I will stick the lead just in case, so I've got the control over it. So what is the bit of tech that changed your life then? Okay,
so one of your producers was talking about the iShuffle. Well, I'm old enough to remember the original iMac, which was this beautiful desktop computer with like an egg-shaped back, and mine was purple and it was beautiful and I loved every second of it. So I have been a Apple person from the very, very beginning.
Yeah, you have, by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Jo, listen, thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
Really, really appreciate your time. Jo Winterbourne there, the East Midlands STEM Manager for Leicestershire Education Business Company, with her views on the conversation we've been having over the duration of the week. Young people and smartphones. What is the sweet spot? Are they good? Are they bad? But also widening that conversation around the benefits of science, technology, education and maths.
Uncomfortable conversations on BBC Leicester.